All right. Okay, everyone. Awesome to see you all here for this third roundtable session that we're doing with the Metaverse Exploring Group. I'm Daniel. I'm the founder of BeamUp, and with BeamUp, we're creating your open metaverse, also called YOM. And today we're going to talk about governance in the metaverse. How do we govern the metaverse? Should it be governed at all? And we have quite some experts here from all over the world with us, and the professional moderator. So give a round of applause for Hans Etman.
Always wanted to do this. Welcome. Welcome here in this theater. Good to see you all here, and I'd like to introduce you to our panel. And on my right and to your left, it's the head of enterprise of Avaya, Cloud Office Solutions, and also a member of the Forbes Technology Council, Rameshwar Balanagu.
Hey everyone, thank you.
And I see the applause coming from the audience. Welcome, Rameshwar. And next to Rameshwar, there's the Director of Ethics and Social Policy of the Meta Campus, Alison Alexander. Alison, welcome.
Hello, thank you for welcoming me. Really lovely to be here.
It's great to have you. And next to Alison, you will see the CEO of Threedium, the 3D models in e-commerce. And his name is Mike Charalambous. Welcome, Mike.
Pleasure to be here, man, and thanks for getting
Wonderful.
my surname right from the first go.
I practiced, I must confess. And our last panelist next to me here is, she's the board member of the Danish Media Board, but also head of media and futurist at the Copenhagen Institute for Futures. Sophie Hivitvet. Welcome, Sophie.
Thank you. Really nice being here. And as you might notice, some of you in the audience, that the only ones moving are Hans and I, because we are actually in VR. So the other panelists can't move. That's why it's not because they're standing really still. So they're here on the computers. But really nice seeing you.
And the keyboard has its limitations, we saw. But it's good that you're all here. And we will be talking about governance today. And that's a very interesting topic, but also a very complex topic. So I'd like to ask you, Rameshwar, why should there be governance in the metaverse?
So, hey everyone, thank you. I come from a traditional world, where we've always been talked of governance of people, process, technology. The same thing, I don't know if you've seen, probably a month or actually a couple of months back, somebody in Europe, lady who tried to enter in Metaverse, was groped for all the bad reasons. Same thing, it's just one bad character, bad apple. The same thing is, if you see what is happening to Luna and USD, just the whole crypto shams, the whole benefits of the crypto being lost, because all the Ponzi schemes created, the Web 2 are now being created. One, you need governance to control people. Other big thing is now, basically, when we talked of governance for people, we are actually talking of planet Earth. It's not just planet Earth in the metaverse, take care of the society we live in. So with all these due characteristics, governance is like a guardrail to help people get a better experience. We want metaverse to be a digital experience, which is a physical plus digital. That should be long lasting. That's the goal of metaverse. And we don't want bad apples in it.
Okay, no bad apples in the metaverse. So governance is to rule these bad apples out, Mike. What do you think? You're an entrepreneur. From the other side, you could say it's a terrific opportunity for new business and for new development. Should there be too many rules, or should we skip the rules from the beginning? Mike?
I think the beautiful thing about the metaverse is that it can be whatever we want it to be. And we have this unique opportunity to be the first players in this game. We're so early that it allows us, in a way, and this could be a good thing or a bad thing, to really dictate up the rules and set up the provenance for everybody else to follow. Now, the good thing is that coming into this new realm, this new internet, if you like, allows us to create a complete new set of identities, guidelines, rules, branding guidelines, which can allow our creativity, our horizons to broaden without being restricted to the norms of our existing society in the real world or in Web 2. However,
okay, so there should be rules, but no restrictions.
Correct. However, the fact that we are looking to get a sort of stamp of approval from traditional brands of Web 2 in the Web 3, and we don't feel that Web 3 can exist without them. And I'm talking about the likes of Meta, the likes of, let's say, Heineken, Budweiser, Nike, and all those guys. It means that we're kind of bound to have the same kind of issues, the same kind of procurement requirements that we have in Web 2, because those guys are not creative. It's not in their DNA to step outside their comfort zones, and they come in with the same kind of expectations that they have in their high street or real world guidelines. And this
Mike,
really
are you warning us that if we don't take charge at this moment and make our own governance, that the big companies, that the corporates will take over the metaverse before it even started?
I'm not warning. I'm talking facts, and the fact that the more we try to bring in traditional brands into the space, the more we play by their rules in Web 2, because they're not willing to follow our rules.
Yeah, thank you for this moment, Mike. Sophie, the metaverse is young. It's a child, in fact. And do we have a kind of moral obligation, maybe even, to define just and not too restrictive rules? What do you think?
Well, first of all, I think we really also have to define a little bit about the metaverse, because we are starting already to talk about Web3, which is a huge part of the development of the metaverse, obviously, because it's virtual economy is driving the metaverse, but we are also in the immersive metaverse, and so there are different kind of, I think, governance that needs to be done in these two different areas. So to begin with, that's a good definition to start. I'm sitting in Brussels right now, 200 meters from the European Parliament, just approved the DSA. I don't know how much you guys know about the Digital Services Act. They're coming with the Digital Services Act, the Digital Markets Act, an AI Act, and a Data Act. All these acts will be implemented within the next 3 or 4 years, 2, 3, 4 years, depending on how fast this will go, right? But that will also mean a lot on how we can actually interact and what is allowed. And I think right now they don't know that much about the metaverse because it's not here yet. As you say, it's a very infinite kind of stage. Yeah, I do believe that we have an obligation to take it very seriously, and I do not believe that we cannot do that without having any kind of regulation, because we have seen that how it works in the internet, in the real world is also like an interesting thing, right? I think we need to redefine our understanding of what is real, because this is just as real, just another kind of real, virtual reality, and of course we need some kind of regulation, which is going to be interesting since we don't have patients here and we don't have the same sort of restrictions, but I do believe we have a very big responsibility in the governance part.
It's a big responsibility. So, Alison, here ethics are involved as well. Where do we find the balance between not being too restrictive and setting rules? And should they be rules of engagement or rights or laws? What do you think?
Listening to what everyone's saying, I think it is, I totally agree with Sophie that we have an obligation, and some of it is that we have an obligation to people who want to use either Web3 and the immersive environment to help them use it. And I think for me, looking in, it's about people want confidence to use something. And to give people confidence, they do need to know, as you say, the rules of engagement. How do I use this? And how am I going to be protected in it? Because even though we might be sitting here new into the world, there'll be those that will just come into it and they will expect to have those protections, there's that balance of those who don't want any of that at the moment, but then those who come into it who want to know they're protected. They want to know, what are the rules? What do I expect? How do I engage with somebody or with groups of people so that then I feel safe? And so I feel that there is a need for us to look at what rules do we currently have that we can transfer into this, and what do we need additionally to help us all make the most of this new extension of our physical world.
Okay, Alice, you're talking about laws in the physical world or laws in the Web 1 worlds? Alison?
Yeah. Are in the physical world. Those that exist. Oh, hello.
Yeah, we can.
Can you hear me?
So it's laws in the physical world you want
Hello?
us to translate
Sorry.
into
So
Web 3.
yes, so it's those. Yes, those that exist. Which ones can we? Let's not waste lots of time making lots of new rules. As we know, rules take a long time to enact, and therefore, what do we have already that we can transition in there?
And make improvements to those existing laws. I see you waving,
Yes.
Sophie. Please.
I like that you see me waving. It's like, hello. Yeah, no, but I totally
wave
agree
back.
with. And I really actually speak of the U. I just stumbled a report. If anybody's interested in the safeguarding, because that's really the thing, right? To all the people that are not feeling, that has to have a help, and we have to protect also the younger ones that are coming into the metaverse. There are some really interesting sort of ideas for safeguarding the metaverse in this guide. It's called Safeguarding the Metaverse, so you can
I think
look it
the
up.
connection failed here a little, Sophie, but you were talking about protecting the younger ones, and I'd like to translate that into your world, Rameshwar.
Did we just lose our moderator?
Okay.
So I can take over. As you said, Rameshwar, you should probably come with your point of view on this case.
Yeah, Sophie, sorry, can you come again?
Yep. Would you like to comment? I think that was what Hans was going to say. Can you hear me? This is a great example.
I can
by the way,
hear
of
you.
the-
I can hear
Yeah,
you.
Great.
I
Same
can definitely
here.
hear you. And I just wanted to add to your point, Sophie, about the safeguarding, because for me, I think that that's a really important piece of the jigsaw of how do we safeguard young people to come into this space. Oh, Hans is back. He's on the table now. Okay. How do we ensure that people are safeguarded? And in the world that I used to work in, the first thing parents would ask is, how are you going to ensure our children are safeguarded if you bring them into the metaverse? Educationalists would ask, how are you going to ensure that they're safe? And sometimes people's fear of it not being safe will keep them out of engaging with it. So that's why we have the obligation to really help people feel and understand the rules.
Yeah. Listen, want me to go ahead? Okay. So, Sophie, the key is education is the key to Web3. A couple of things is need open standards and open source. Open standards is more like a process framework of what standards, what protocols to follow, what are the guidelines, the good things to have. And open source helps people really understand the intent of the metaverse or the community. So if a community is created with a good intention, it has to be open and it has to be seen by the public. There's no second thought of that. Of course, again, there are good and the bad. If there's a bad community created, it should be very explicit. It's for the people who have that kind of a mind. Metaverse is all about decentralized, permissionless, governless. It's all about the like-minded people. So open source and open standards are the key, and they're the foundation to kind of putting the protocols.
Okay, I'm just jumping in here because I did agree in some point. I agree that it could be nice if it could be, fully decentralized and follow these sort of the utopia of Web3. But I do not believe that that is a plausible future of the metaverse. We're going to release 4 scenarios for the future of the metaverse from the Institute next week. We'll also do a webinar on work in the metaverse. So we send it there. If anybody would like to come, it's for free. But an open metaverse, as obviously this is also all about, is possible in some distinct, but there are so many forces driving the metaverse right now that it's going to be very hard to continue that. And also, as we've seen with other true open, sort of non-regulated spaces, they haven't succeeded yet. So what, in your mind, would make it succeed, if I may ask? Maybe that's also an open question to the panel.
Sure. So there's a funny thing going on. I don't know if you're all aware. The concept of walled gardens. Are you all aware of the walled garden concept? So,
could you explain it to us briefly?
Sure. So we don't want to get into the politics. But this is a fact. So, and Trump kind of had this discussion. We'll just let it go. They're banned it. Same thing when the CEO of Pfizer was mocked by a scientist saying all the clinical trials not good. They're blocked it. I don't want to go into the politics. I repeat, the whole objective is we are coming into the social media so that we can express our intent, maybe right or maybe bad. Somebody else is controlling it. The whole concept of walled garden is they're siloing what can be communicated, what cannot be. With the decentralized world and the metaverse world, we said we will be, we'll break the shackles of walled gardens. But when you put a governance, what happens is the whole concept of breaking down the walled gardens, we will create mini walled gardens. We move away from a walled garden, somebody else governs us, we'll move to a mini walled garden where all the governance teams agree that these are the right protocols. That is something that will happen, what I call them as mini walled gardens.
Okay, so we're talking about equality and about inclusion here as well. About not walling out anyone. Listen.
But this is very vague, though, no? Like you could be whoever you want to be in the metaverse. You could be a bisexual penguin if you like, So there's no rules that apply on equality or this kind of stuff, and that's the whole notion of the metaverse. So the moment we start going down that rabbit hole, we're missing the point, no?
And Mike, but I think Rameshwar is also talking about walled gardens, as in pieces of the metaverse that you cannot enter if you're a bisexual penguin.
Yeah.
And should you recommend creating your own bisexual penguin garden then?
I think we should not go down that thing. People talking about these things clearly are very oriented in the existing notions of the internet. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Alison, there is an element of sorry, I was trying to, as Sophie said, not move too much because I keep moving all over the place.
You're doing fine.
There is an element of, to be inclusive, again, we know as a society in the physical world that we have had to bring in legislation and policies and procedures to help us be a more inclusive world and fair world. And therefore, the move into an immersive world and the wider Web3, I don't see any evidence of how that will work without bringing in that legislation or those regulations into this world. I mean, I'm interested if people feel that that's possible, but I'm not seeing that that's something that will naturally happen at the moment. Okay, and when I recently did a poll on that in just on the social platforms, and actually what I'm getting back is that people also don't feel that the metaverse will remove that bias that exists in society, physical society, and therefore we will need some rules to enable it to ensure that it is a fairer and inclusive world.
Okay, thank you, Alison, for this moment. I'd like to invite you, ladies and gentlemen, in our audience. If you have a question about inclusion or diversity in the metaverse, please raise your hand and we will ask our panelists here to answer you. So if you can use the digital way of raising a hand, or maybe you can use just if you've got some gear, raising your hand. I see someone talking here. It's Papa Womp. So Daniel, could you switch on the microphone of Papa Womp?
Hello.
Hello.
Very
Give me 1
interesting
second. I'll put you on the mic.
All right.
Papa.
Dex.
Am I on the mic?
Oh, Dex. Yes, you're on the mic. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, so very interesting points. And I think that, do you think that the metaverse has the potential of becoming an even bigger echo chamber than Web 2 has been? Because indeed, it allows for certain groups to get together, to create their own spaces, and to exclude people even in more ways than were possible before. And by that, I mean that, yes, you could be a bisexual penguin, but right now, if you talk to the Hispanic or the Afro-American communities, you'll find that even if you are a penguin, if you have an accent, it's heard, it comes across, and there is very tangible discrimination going on. So the question is, will the metaverse have the potential to be an even bigger echo chamber than Web 2? And how do we avoid that collision course?
Is that something you're afraid of as well, Dex?
I'm not afraid. I don't care personally because I choose where I want to go. But I think that if we want to shape, so it's very important to remember that when we say we mean me personally. Each one of us has an idea of what that utopian future is. And if we get some of the undesirable members of society in this room, when they say we want a free metaverse, their version of what that looks like is going to be completely different to ours. So it's a two-way street, right? If we go for a lack of governance because anyone can be anything, well, there's a lot of people that want to be something that I don't want them to be because it's not shaping the sort of future that I want for myself. So I think it's a tricky thing, right?
Yeah, it's a tricky thing. You mentioned it. I see Sophie waving and I saw Dax applauding you. Sophie, you first, please.
Super interesting point. And I think that goes also what you're saying, Alison, with replication of the bias, right? So what's happening right now, how can we avoid replicating sort of the structures that we already see in social media and that we see on different social platforms? And I'm not sure that just letting it all go, Elon Musk style, Twitter, I'm not sure that's the way to solve it. And I'm afraid in the sense that I have kids. And how do we make sure that this kind of world will be the best version? So it could be, we really need to take this serious. And that's why, speaking of governance.
This is the question, Sophie, but can you answer this question as well? How do you make it safe?
Yeah, like the question of how do we make it safe? Exactly. But that's what I'm coming to the point of governance. I think somehow we need to figure a way to make sure that we have some values and we can make a safe sort of space. And I think don't have the solution. I mean, if I had, I would be really, it would be really interesting because we don't even know what the metaverse is going to shape, And of course, that's why we need to take it seriously already now. So we are shaping it instead of letting that shape us. So, which has been the sense of the way the internet. Yeah, Mike.
One thing is that because here now we're addressing the freedom of speech, because think of the metaverse as a new form of social media. And that's exactly what it is, right? Instead of being a feed, a 2D feed, it's going to be a 3D world where you voyage and navigate. To which extent can we actually influence freedom of speech, though? And it's the same like P2P games, like Counter-Strike or FIFA. When you're playing with someone over the web, you don't really know who's behind that console. You don't really know what their next move is going to be. You don't really know if they're going to swear or if they're going to be a kind person. But even the companies that build those games, they don't even have proper rules about that. You know, you go in your own risk in that essence, you know, and you still have children from the age of 9 till people from the age of 35 playing in those games. And there's no way about having some sort of age demographic to segment these interactions.
Okay,
So how can we talk
enter
about
at your own risk? Is that what you say, Mike?
I think that this is the only way that we can go into this. Otherwise, we risk about ruining everything, you know?
Okay, so
That
maybe not rules, but
the metaverse.
But nudging and coercing people in the right direction without rules, without strict rules.
I think so, you know? Otherwise, we just risk to ruining what we're trying to build, because everything will organically come to a point, you know?
Okay, yeah, thank you. And Alison?
But if I can, I mean, that organic growth, we have to also look at who is organically growing it. What parts of society are actually the ones that are leading that growth? Is that the whole of society, or is it those that have that resource and that ability to be able to invest their time and resource in it, and therefore they're getting to shape what that new world will look like? And that's therefore a danger that we've been trying to avoid, that's in the physical world, that too many people have shaped it from a certain group, and now we're wanting to move away from that. And there's that danger again with letting us allow the metaverse to evolve. To be able to evolve it, you have to have resource and you have to have money. And again, that means we start to see certain sectors of society shaping the future for everybody. And we need to be questioning that and not allowing that to happen.
Okay. Does that mean,
from the audience,
that
Hans?
the rules?
I'm sorry.
Sorry, Daniel?
There's a question from the audience, Melos. Yeah. Should I give him the mic? One second,
Melos,
Melos.
please.
I'm sorry. One second. Oh, okay. I can't put you on the megaphone for some reason. I don't know why.
Oh,
Okay, so Melos.
Oh, you can do it yourself, Melos. You can do it yourself. Click on the host tools and then click on amplify my voice.
oh, nice. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now. Melos, please, your question.
Nice. Well, it's not a question. It's just the subject what you're talking about. I think age restriction would be really nice in the metaverse, because, yeah, people are just joining in, and if everyone can join in every room, and the age is like, yeah, it's all the same. It doesn't matter. I think there will be collisions between this. I think it would be nice to have age restrictions. And also, you were talking about games. When you play games, you don't know who is behind the desk. But in the metaverse, there will be much more role-playing than in games. Games you just play with friends and online. And sometimes, yeah, you have to talk to people to have good team decisions in the game. But that doesn't, and then you don't know who is there on the desk. But in the metaverse, you will be more like role-playing gaming. So that's a whole different world.
Yeah, is that a good thing, do you think, Melos?
Yeah, no. I don't know yet.
Okay. And what does it depend on? If it's going to be good or bad?
Well, if people are getting too much roles, you have to you have to care for everyone, and everyone has a separate place and stuff. And now with gaming, it's just like you're there for just playing that game, right? So you're not playing in the role. And
It depends.
I think we have to
It depends on the
consider
purpose that you're
if
visiting
people
the
are-
metaverse for.
Sorry?
It depends on your purpose, the purpose why you are visiting the metaverse.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you for your question and for your remark, Melos. I'd like to come back to you, Alison, on this, because role-playing, as Melos says, does also imply that maybe the people that you meet in the metaverse are no people at all. They could be AI.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. They could be so many different people. And again, that comes back to what we were referring to earlier. People will want to be safeguarded, even those who might say, I don't want rules or regulations. They will want to know that they're actually engaging with a person or a bot. That they might want to engage with a bot, but they want to know that that's the case. And that's that openness that we have to have. But for parents to allow children, and I mean children, young people, young adults, to engage, for educationalists to welcome Web3 and the metaverse, and for policymakers to do that, they will want to know that we have that openness and that transparency. And without that, they will keep fearing it because of the dangers, inherent dangers. We have to accept that we live in a society where if you don't protect, people are at risk. And therefore, we do need to hold a responsibility for the protection of people.
So maybe we should warn our children, but should we make them afraid of the metaverse? Sophie, what do you think?
No, we shouldn't be afraid of the metaverse, but we should definitely somehow help navigating in it. And so I think two things also interesting here, like what is our identification going to be like? Are we going to have like one kind of login and then we can be different people in that kind of login or identity? How can we like using NFTs, the non-fungible token, kind of, will that be a way to be our identities and make sure that people are who they say they are? Or how can we assure also the investments that we make in the virtual world? If we don't have any governance and we don't have any rules, then it's already very like a vulnerable kind of economy. How can we make sure that this is something that we can actually trust a little bit more? I think trust is going to be one of the biggest issues in the metaverse, and figuring out how to create trust among each others as avatar to avatars, but also avatar to business, or all these kind of business to avatars, or this kind of thing.
Just
and
like
I
in the
think
real
that will
world.
demand some. Yeah, exactly.
Can I ask, how much do you trust
Sure,
Facebook?
Mike.
Like Meta?
You trust Facebook?
Meta?
Yeah, do you trust it?
Yeah.
Is that an open question to the audience?
Let's ask the audience. So in the audience, please, can you raise your hand if you trust Facebook enough to use it?
Or
I see
raise the little
people saying
yellow
no.
hand.
That's Daniel.
No,
Daniel
people
says no, I don't use it.
I don't use it.
And I see Tab also saying he doesn't use it. Oh, that's interesting.
Maybe you're saying you don't trust it. I think people, they use it even though they don't trust it. That's the thing right now, because there are not many alternatives. But I think that within the metaverse, in creating a space, we have to find more trust.
Okay. And
all I'm saying though is that
I see a question from the audience. Tab,
yeah,
do you
let's
have a
go
question? I can put you on the mic. 1 second. Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, so no, I do use Facebook. I do have a lot of trust issues with it though, being as the fact checkers, and a lot of them, I mean, they're fact checking a lot of stuff that doesn't make sense. As in, like, sorry, I wasn't prepared for this. Like they fact check some of the stuff that's actually true, and a lot of people are getting banned for speaking out on some of the things that are, I mean, their opinion. It's kind of not a free, kind of like how Elon's doing with Twitter. It's not a free speech platform.
Okay. So it could be too strict, the rules of Metaverse, the Meta or Facebook at the moment. Yeah, I see a thumb coming up. Thank you, Tab, for your contribution here. So how should we treat the trust issue in a completely new world? Should we maybe build upon the laws that are in the real world, like Alison says? Or should we define new rules here?
So this is what I was trying to get when I asked the question about Facebook. We've got two different routes to go. One is the route where we go in the direction that we're used to and we're programmed as human beings, where we always have someone making rules and we need to oblige with them. That's what we feel it's good. But that's the standard in the society we live in. And then we've got the other route of actually utilizing the true freedom of speech, where we just feel that if everybody's equal, then we should not give them rules, because everybody's equal to do whatever they want to do. If a human wants to engage into a crime scene, fine, he wants to do it. And if someone wants to be very, very truly good and they want to be truly generous and they want to truly embrace a community, they should be doing it. But we are not the ones who should come up with the rules, because who are we to decide what is right and what is wrong, and to which extent things should be doing.
Take this thought, Mike, and before I get to you, Sophie, I'd like to ask Daniel in the audience to contribute to this conversation at the moment. Daniel was waving at us.
Yes, I'd like to add an observation that I'm making here. There was the time during the Boxer Rebellion in China where there were spheres of influence that were moving into the Oh, can you hear me, sir?
We can. Yes, please.
Okay.
Daniel.
So I was making an observation of the Boxer Rebellion in China, where we had spheres of influence pushing into the Chinese mainland from different countries. I'm seeing the same thing happening here. So there was the concern of large corporations, which are acting a lot like nation states, but also here within this forum, it almost sounds like we have a bunch of missionaries with a certain ideology that's going to be portrayed. So, Allison, I think you should be reminded why my country separated from yours is because we think liberty is more important than safety. That's not to say that safety isn't important, but I'd rather be free than safe. And Sophie, you're trying to get the EU to put rules on everybody that are not in the EU. I don't want to live under the law of the EU whatsoever. So, just want to make those observations there. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. And I see Dax coming back to us again. Dax, please.
Yeah. This is really interesting because Mike spoke before about freedom of speech. And I think that's a very American perspective. I don't believe in unfettered, unregulated free speech. I think speech should have consequences. In fact, hate speech is recognized. So I have a problem with unbridled free speech for the sake of free speech. But the other thing is, in order to check our privilege, I think if we look around this room, how many people actually have suffered some sort of discrimination because they're a minority, and their personal experience has a big impact on the topic of governance. Their voice is not heard in this room because everybody who's here is more or less white and more or less with disposable income in a situation that they can access this new technology and be a part of the shaping of it. So I'd like to point out who's missing.
How can you know that?
Thank you, Dax, for your contribution. And to know for sure what you are saying is we should look into the data here, but I'd like to let you translate the panelists here. So it's also a matter of culture. What's your background and what you think is freedom, or what you think is freedom of speech or liberty? I saw your hand raised, Alison, so please.
Yes, and I want to try and connect a few of these things because I do want to come back to Sophie's point around where she said about protection and protection of our assets, and then the points that have been raised around those who have the kind of the luxury, the resource to invest in this growing world that's been said. And that's why it's so important that we have means of protection. Because at the moment, if you are floating around the Web3, the immersive world, you're hearing people constantly talk about only invest what you can afford to lose, only invest what you're okay to lose. Well, that's a very small percentage of society, which comes back to the point that is just being made. Who can really afford to lose it? So if the advice to us all is only invest in NFTs or in aspects of the metaverse, if you can afford to lose that resource, then we are going to be again allowing a very small contingent
Sorry,
of
can you repeat the last
society
sentence,
to
Alison?
shape it. Sorry, I was just saying that we're going to be in danger of continuing the trend of letting a small minority shape it. As a woman who have felt that I've had to stand constantly up for my right to be in positions and to be able to have a voice, it's really important that we're not re-allowing the same trend that has happened in the past. We need to open this up to every human being to be able to engage in it. And the only way to do that, for me, is I see
this is a
that we
different
will
angle,
need some
Alison.
rules.
So maybe if we look at it from this perspective, we could even say that if we do things right in the metaverse, in Web 3, we could even learn in Web 2, Web 1, and the real world.
We could, yes.
I'm
but I
not
think
sure
by
how we
then-
resonate with how do we resonate the
Okay,
fact
Mike?
that invest? I just have a question. How do we correlate these two things that Alison just said? One is invest at your own risk, and then being a woman and finding it hard to speak. Those two things have nothing to do with one another, but also the fact that investing at your own risk, I mean, why do we care if some market forces decide some things to be expensive and some things to be affordable and some things to be free? Again, people choose what they want to do with their money, with the way that they're managing their assets, right? Why should someone go and invest on an ape? Or why should someone go and buy 2 or 3 or 5 plots of land in other sides, deeds or decentralized? Like, who are we to tell them whether it's right or not?
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Sophie?
I find it super interesting to discuss these things. Also, I think the Web3 is much more than NFTs as such. We haven't even touched upon that idea of a decentralized autonomous organizations, the DAOs, and the way that we can organize ourselves and the way we can get a voice and make sure that everybody can sort of be part of these things, go together, buy Blockbuster. That didn't happen, but or buy Twitter, as somebody said, like we could go and do that. I think we have some new dynamics that we have to discover and figure out how to use them. But I don't believe in the sense of just totally free market and opening up. And I want also just to address the thing you said, Daniel. I'm not like just saying that EU regulation should be put all over the world or trying to have one sort of governance. But we really need to figure out the values that we treasure, because we are losing democracies. And I'm not saying that that's something that everybody here maybe agrees on, that we need democracies, but in my point of view, democracy is a very, very, very good thing, and I would like the metaverse to actually encourage democracies as well.
Should we discuss this and maybe have an expansive dialogue to find common values? Sophie?
I would say yes. At least discuss it. At least have a dialogue and be very clear on the fact that we need to address these issues one way or the other. I don't have the answer, but it's something that we really need to address, looking into the different possible futures of the metaverse.
I find it together, and this brings me to the topic that you mentioned, but we haven't discussed it yet. I'd like to separate the blockchain principle from the cryptocurrencies for just this moment. Could the blockchain principle help us to find common values or to find guarantees for safety in the metaverse?
I'm sorry, I'm taking the mic again here, but I really think that's interesting,
Sophie?
because we have lost, moving back to the trust issue. But we are losing trust in institutions. We're losing trust in each other generally. So we're moving towards trust that is more distributed. So it's distributed on the blockchain. It could be a possible solution for creating trust and making trust in the software. And since everything in the metaverse is software somehow, it could be interesting to look into those kind of figuring out how to put trust there.
Could a joint responsibility and the blockchain principle help? Mike, what do you think?
Oh, sorry,
Maybe Mike
I was talking, I was muted.
No problem. What do you think?
I think blockchain is the foundation for everything, and that's why we're even talking about all these things now, because blockchain makes it visible, right? But it's as I said, my perspective is that everything for the time being should be unregulated. We should have full democracy, if you like, for people to choose to do whatever they want to do, so we can start understanding different behaviors and synthesizing different things before we proceed and coming up with stuff and regulations that might not resonate in this new world.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Alison, what do you think?
I think the blockchain, as Mike said, is really the framework on what everything is built, and that's a whole conversation about. I think the blockchain can really be empowering for individuals, and what Sophie mentioned around having that discussion around the values, I think that would be really important.
Okay, and if we're talking about tokens, could maybe the tokens be separated into an economic value and maybe a personal, non-transferable value? Could you separate those two sides of it? Sophie?
Of the blockchain?
In the blockchain, yeah. If this has to be some platform in which we are paying or value, so could those maybe be separated into a personal one and an economic one? Sophie,
It's an interesting, yeah. Well, no, it's because I'm located in a bar, so that's why, even though I'm not talking.
Oh, yeah. There's this little cloud over your head.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry about that. And actually, really weird to sit with VR set inside a bar with other people, because it's kind of disconnected.
Yeah, you can't tell if they're drinking your drink at the moment.
Exactly. I'm super isolated in here. But I do believe we can. It's an interesting question to figure out how can we use the blockchain principles for what can we use it for. Proof of ownership, is one. Proof of the identity, proof of different kind of. I don't know. I think it has a lot of potential, and I'm not saying it's necessarily blockchain, because who knows what kind of things we have figured out in 5 or 10 years from now. But I think it has some interesting principles that can be put into place here. Okay,
and not sure how you can use it, but you feel that there is some kind of useful way of putting blockchain into position here. Okay, I see you nodding. Yeah, Mike, what do you think?
For the blockchain, or for what?
If we are to use blockchain, you say blockchain is the principle, is the basis, is the basic of the metaverse. And if we should use tokens or like a cryptocurrency or what's the word again? The NFTs. Could we maybe separate them into an economic and a personal value?
Again, I think it's too soon to be able to have a right or wrong answer around that. Okay. For sure, though, tokens have been used and they're already in a test and learn phase around voting rights. So the more tokens you accumulate, the more voting rights you have. Now, whether that is something that is justifiable or not, it's still to be decided.
Okay, so you're not sure yet, but what's your gut feeling?
My gut feel is that we should not utilize any tokens around an economic perspective, because they would still need to be pegged against a currency. And which currency should that be? Should that be Bitcoin? Should that be Ethereum? Should that be USD? Should that be Euro? It's very, very hard to predict. But definitely to use them in a form of voting, correct. But again, going back to the point previously raised, do you need to have more money to be able to obtain those tokens? And therefore, if you have more money, you have more voting rights. Is that the right thing to do? Who knows? That's what I'm saying. We should still keep exploring.
Okay, and what's the a matter of time that you're talking about, Mike? What do you think? Will the metaverse be developed enough to give an answer to these questions in 1 year, 5 years, maybe 10, or next week?
I would say we need to complete 1 full year cycle of understanding and seeing different behaviors with how people can do really good things and how they could potentially cause severe issues with the way that they're utilizing these kind of voting rights or powers. And that's what's going to allow us to see how we're going to prevail around that.
Okay. And Alison, what's your prediction? What will we see in 1 year?
Well, I think it's going to be a very different position in 1 year. If you look at the growth we've had over the last year, I would hope that within a year that we really started to think around how the blockchain particularly could be used to help people with their identity.
And how, can you explain a bit what you mean with helping with their identity?
Sorry, to really help, I think the blockchain can be used to protect people's identity, the same as we have passports now. We could use blockchain in the future for that. So if your question around could you have an economic blockchain and a personal blockchain, I think it can have those different functions. And as Mike said, it shouldn't be dependent on how many tokens you have as to how and what you can do on the blockchain.
Okay, thank you. And will you be there? Will you be living in the metaverse maybe in 1 year? Alison.
Well, sorry, two things were ringing. So will I be living in that? Will we all be living in that? No, I think we'll be visiting it more, and we will be doing more activity. We'll be shopping in it. And I know we can do some of that now, but I think we'll be doing a lot more in it, in the metaverse.
Sophie?
So there are many different predictions of when will the metaverse be here, and also in regards to the scenarios that we are doing, it has a long time before we can actually talk about the metaverse, because here we are in a space, we're in a meta space, maybe we're in a room, we're in a metaverse. We have like different kind of ways to discuss where we are right now. We are not in the metaverse because the metaverse will need some kind of interoperability, a lot more kind of accessibility for people. So we will have to have more people having the technical devices that sort of supports being inside the metaverse. So that will take a long time. So in 1 year, no, we will not be in the metaverse at all, very much. I mean, I row in the metaverse, if you can say it like that. You know, I do a lot of activities, but it's not going to be so much. So I think, but I do believe that we have to look at all these things and not just let things happen. We have to be very aware of the structures that are starting to shape the development of the metaverse.
Yeah, we have to be aware, and maybe even be more aware than we are now. But in 1 year, it won't happen all at the same time. But what is your prediction of the time? Would it be 2 years, 5 years? What do you think?
Well, we'll be seeing different stages of the metaverse. So evolving from being this now totally infant, then to a little bit more mature, a little bit more, and then moving on. It's so we don't predict sort of time frames like that, but definitely 5 to 10 years, obviously, before something is mature enough, I would say, to be called the metaverse.
So thank you very much, Sophie. We are at the end of this hour, and ladies and gentlemen, I see that Rameshwar, I think, accidentally left us. He's in Dubai, and he had some trouble with his connections. And I'd like to end this conversation with the remark that if we are still working on our view on the metaverse and our view on governance in the metaverse, I'd like to invite you to come back to this conversation, my dear panelists, within, let's say, 3 months, 4 months, and keep this going until we know for sure in which direction we all want it to go. Thank you very much, Rameshwar, although you are not here. Thank you very much, Alison, for contributing to the panel. Thank you very much, Mike, for your contribution as well, and Sophie for being in and contributing to our panel from Brussels, where you are now. And ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to applaud you for being here, for your questions and your attention. It was a lovely conversation. Thank you very much, and hope to see you next time.